here. So I am going to begin with our first speaker. Miss Jay Johnson. Jay is a very strong Girl Scout advocate. She's been doing it most of her life. She was the executive director for the Girl Scouts of the Western Reserve in Akron, Ohio. She's been a professional Girl Scout. She was part of the Hampton Citizen Unity Commission, the Hampton Coalition for Youth. She's been the chair of the board for Virginia Organizing, and she co-founded this very storytelling festival. There you are, ma'am. You have 17 minutes.
It's nothing like telling somebody who likes to talk how much time they have. Thank you. I'm so glad to see you in the room. I'm a strange breed of person known as someone who was born and raised in Hampton, Virginia. Right? Okay. And, you know, a lot of the storytellers come with props. I don't need one because behind you is my high school. All right. So I'm a member of the Phineas High School class of 1957. The amazing thing you need to know is that, you know, today one of the things that people work real hard at, educators, is getting school spirit, getting kids to really care about their school. The people who graduated from Phineas High School care so much that tomorrow they will be having over 50 years of all-class reunion. It's called, the legacy dinner will be at Queen Street Baptist Church. Right? And I tell you what, I've had friends come with me to that dinner, and they cannot believe that people come into that room and you can feel the caring in the room. That's the kind of place that was. And you know what is so really strange about it, as we look back on it, is how that whole thing started, this Phineas High School thing. Because back in the 1930s, Hampton found itself with no high school for its Negro students. The time being what it was, we were not about to go to Hampton High School, so they had to find somewhere to put us. And so you're going to say, what were they doing before that? Before that, there was a little school building. For those of you who know where the Emancipation Oak is, there was a little school building there called Whittier School. My dad and my aunt went to that school, and that was the education for Negro students in the city of Hampton. So the city had to do something, so they went to the college and said, we need a building for our students, and they leased that building from Hampton then Institute for 30 years to be the high school for Negro students. So when you ride by Hampton Institute, that building is still there. But at the time that we went there, it was the George P. Phoenix High School. A lot of really good things happened there. Sometimes I didn't remember them. As you look back on the times that we were in, I spoke with my 92-year-old cousin, and those of you who come regularly always hear me talk about my 92-year-old cousin. Now, Andy talks about his aunt, right? But I'm talking about my cousin, all right? And that's because, first of all, I'm older than Andy. I'm only a few years younger than my cousin, who's 92. But she is special to me because she was on the other side of the bedroom door when the nurse was helping my mother bring me into the world. So this woman that I visit has been in my life all of my life. And I think that is just a miracle and a blessing. But as we were talking about growing up in Hampton, because every time I visit her, you know, first of all, I have to talk to her about this stuff because I keep my brain fresh to tell you the stories. But also because we just enjoy talking about growing up. You know, this is what you do with your relatives. And so I said, well, tell me, if you talked about that time in Hampton, how would you describe it? And she said to me, I would describe it as gentle segregation. Gentle segregation. This seems a little weird, doesn't it? So I said to her, well, why do you say that? And she said, well, nobody really was rabid and crazy and, doing things that were done in some of the other places. And, I felt like we had a pretty good life, despite the fact that it was segregated. So I thought about that. And then I had a classmate call me from the class of 57. Some of you in Hampton might know her. Her name is Margaret Wilson, and she is an unofficial mayor of the city. Lives in Aberdeen. Well, she's an Aberdeen person, so that'll tell you something else, too. But Margaret called me. She said, Janice, do you ever think about how special our high school education was? And I said, not really. And she said, well, just think about it. We were on the edge of the college campus. We could not go to the city's library, because we were Negroes. We could not use the city's library, but we could use the library on the campus. We could not go to concerts in the city, but we went to every concert and music production at Ogden Hall on the campus. We went to football games on the campus. We were like little college students. As a matter of fact, our mascot was the baby pirates. And I guess if somebody really asked us, we probably said, oh yeah, we go to Hampton too, So I want to tell you a few things that happened. I told a story yesterday, but most of you weren't in the room yesterday, so you'll get a chance to hear it. We had I considered a wonderful science teacher, Paul D. Simpson, in the 9th grade. Now, mind you, there were 5 elementary schools that emptied into Phoenix High, that we were the class of 57, and even though they were building a junior high school, they were not planning to send us back there, okay? So we were the lowest class at Phoenix High School for 3 years. Now that does something psychologically to you when you're a 9th grader, right? You've already been there 2 years, and you're still on the bottom of the heap. However, it also helped us to bond quite a bit. We had our own reunions for over 50 years after we graduated. That's how much we liked each other. We put up with our idiosyncrasies and all the crazy things we knew about each other all those years, and it didn't matter by the time you got to be 70, who cared, right? But this is the deal. Mr. Simpson was a wonderful science teacher, somebody that I really, really did start to learn some science from. But he decided one day, he said to us, in a couple of days, we're going to catch the ferry and we're going to Norfolk. Now, I don't know how this happened. There must have been some discussion at some point about whether we had ever been to Norfolk or whether we had ever been on a ferry or maybe both. So he arranged for us he got our parents' permission, he got the school's permission, he got the money for us to go, and we could miss 3 classes, including his that morning, but we had to be back by lunchtime. That seemed strange at the time, but now I realize that there were students in the class that lunch was their only meal for the day. Because at that time, cafeteria workers cooked the food we ate. So you would be in class and you would smell the aroma coming from the 3rd floor, and you knew there was something good for lunch, So we had to be back by lunchtime. We walked 3 miles from that high school to where the ferry station was, which if you look today, it's about where the marina is at Fort Monroe. We got on the ferry, and I can assure you we were as obnoxious as 9th graders would possibly be. We got over to Norfolk. Mr. Simpson said, everybody, off the ferry, quick, off the ferry. Are you all on dry land? Yes, sir, we're all on dry land. You have been to Norfolk. Get back on the ferry, we're taking the same ferry back. And we're there, wow, right? So we're on the ferry coming back. Leave it to the class of 57 not to have another adventure. And so I'm trying to think who it was, and it had to be Carl Fauntleroy, because Carl was one of the class jokesters, And we called him Little Abner because he was always going faster than his pants, So his ankles were always exposed. But Carl was at the water fountain, and he said to the class, come over. Okay, so we come, and we don't know why we're there. This is the kind of class where somebody would go outside and point at the sky, and everybody else would point at the sky. Nobody knew what they were looking for. So they were around the water fountain, and Carl said, Mr. Simpson, come here, we need you, sir. He comes over, he says, yes, ma'am, yes, young man, what do you need? He said, Mr. Simpson, your class needs to know what is the difference in chemical composition between white water and colored water. Because at the time, there were two water fountains wherever we went. One said white, and the other one said colored. And you were supposed to drink out of the one according to which you were, right? So he asked the question, and Mr. Simpson thought about it for a hot minute, and he contemplated and said, young man, there is no difference. And we all said, wow, then what is all of this about? Why do we have two separate fountains if the water is no different? Of course, we really kind of knew that. But, this was not just our episode. It was an episode for everybody on the ferry. So it was not just learning for us. So that day, we had two experiences. We went to Norfolk, and we found out that all water is the same. Now, when we were going to high school, one of the things that happened every year was we got new textbooks that were not new. That has been used by someone else. Writing in the margins, the answers were already circled, the whole 9 yards. I see some people going like this, so you had that experience. 1 year out of 5 years of high school, we got brand new textbooks. Those textbooks were biology books. And those biology books had in the center of the book little plastic things that overlaid the human body. We got to see the human body. Little plastic, when overlay by overlay, all the good things. Oh. Somebody thought that we were so advanced in our knowledge that we could handle biology books, and maybe I don't know, but that's what happened, right? So, you have to think about those things that were going on. When you get older, everybody tells you what to do.
Talk there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I forgot where I was. Oh, the biology book. Oh, you remember that, huh? Saw a little gleam in your eye when I said biology books and little overlays, right? So we are all in the class, and the teacher hasn't arrived yet, and we are just looking through these new books. First of all, at the wonder that we had new books. But then at the wonder of what was in the middle of the books. And Mr. Booker walks in, he's, daddy cool. You have to realize the high school students, we had Mr. Lovett, Mr. Booker, and Mr. Joe. That was it in terms of the teachers. And so all of them, some girl or other had a crush on. Well, Mr. Booker was daddy cool, right? So Mr. Booker comes in, doing his, and he says, okay, so I see you found the new books. Yes, sir, we have. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed them, but we are starting in chapter 1. So we had to put them down, right? So those are the kinds of things that went on at the school that were really, the only time that I think that I really got upset was at the time that the Supreme Court had made the decision to integrate schools with all deliberate speed, and the state of Virginia was trying its best not to be speedy. And so one of the things they did was they came to Phoenix High School to run blood tests on us. Unauthorized, unbeknown. I called my mother because it was just strange to me. And she said, you are not to participate in anything like that. I know what they're doing. And so when I got home, I said, well, what were they doing? She said they're trying to prove that you have too many germs to be in a class with their children. And actually, only one student out of the entire school had anything. She had TB. One student out of 500. So those are the kind of things that happened then. But one of the things, and who's keeping time? Oh, I'm good. I got 5 minutes. Ooh, oh boy. Okay. Because I need to tell you what I did in the summer. Because the other thing you see on the walls is about Bayshore Beach. And Bayshore Beach was one of 4 black beaches in the state of Virginia. There was Mark Haven, that was in Tappahannock. There was Log Cabin outside of Williamsburg. There was Seaview in Norfolk. But the queen of beaches was Bayshore. Bayshore had it all. We had the rubber carts, you know, the bumper carts. We had the Ferris wheel. We had the swings. We call them hobby horses, the carousel. You know, all of those things were at Bayshore. Before people even got in the gate, they were trying to get devil crabs. There were 3 people who sold devil crabs, and they competed about who had the very best devil crab recipe. And so when people got off the buses, and I need to tell you that at the time we had what was called excursions. Now, if you lived in Hampton, the excursion meant you got on the yellow school bus and you went somewhere. That's all it meant, right? But if you were from Richmond, you were driving, you were riding in something like a Greyhound bus, because they were big city people, right? And so when they come down, the first thing they do is buy bags of devil crabs before they even get in the gate to Bayshore. Now, I lived in Bayshore almost. I walked from my house on Back River Road to Bayshore Beach at least 3 times a week during the summer. And so I would get there, and a part of what I did when I got there was help them sweep out the pavilions and stuff so I could get free ride tickets, you know. And so that's what I did during the summer. And I did go swimming, really. I like swimming, contrary to somebody last night who had a problem with water. Yes. But let me tell you, when I was a little kid, my dad put me in one of those big rafts, inner tubes, okay? And he put me on it, and he floated me out, and he said, what you must always do is keep your eye on the shore. You must keep your eye, and you can only ride parallel to the shore. If you get out too far, you get down and find out where the bottom is, and kick yourself up and go for the shore. And that was my lesson of survival, right? But, you know, Bayshore was not only wonderful for that reason. Bayshore had a hotel with a restaurant with cloth tablecloths. Bayshore had a dance hall to which some of the biggest bands and stars of the country came. And I'm told that they were so wonderful that the owners of Buckrow came over to Bayshore and tried to contract for the acts to appear at Buckrow once they finished at Bayshore. And that is really, Bayshore was the queen of beaches, right? Well, they had kids' games and they had adults' games, right? And I wanted to play the adult game, which was a gambling game, right? So what they had, the man had this wheel in a circle, and they had like triangles that started small and in the middle, came out to the end, and there was a cup on the end, all primary colors, and then gold and silver, you know, rotated around this thing, all right? And then around that were tables that were a square around that circular thing, and they had the colors on the table. So, of course, you put your money on the color, whatever that was, you know, you're gonna win. So I'm always there trying to get between 2 people to put my dime on a color. And the man said, Little Johnson, get away from here. You're messing up my business. So I stand there, and we're looking at this thing, and what happens is there's this cup that's turned over in the middle, and he starts to whirl this thing around, you know, like when you see on the shows, you see the big wheel going around. Well, this wheel is like this, going around, 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 around. And he's ringing a cowbell, and people are cheering. It sounds like a football game. It's just ding, 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 and woo, 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 woo. And he reaches up and he pulls this top off the middle, and there is a rat. who cannot figure out what he's supposed to do. So now the rat is running around in circles, the table's still going around in circles, people are still yelling, he's still ringing the bell, and finally the rat runs into a hole, and whatever color that hole is the winner. I loved that game. I thought it was... I mean, think of all the interaction and excitement. I mean, you know, if you live in a town where nothing is going on, the rat man can be very excited. That's what I called him, the rat man, because I never knew what his name was, but he had a thriving business. So I even made up my mind when I got to be an adult, I was going to legally go down to Bayshore Beach and put my money on a color and play the rat man. No more Bayshore Beach. No more Phoenix High School. And one of the things that has really been a part of our lives is not just that they are no more, but what was the respect of their ending? That is one of the things that the people who are Phoenix High School people regret the most. That when they closed Phoenix High School, they threw away everything. Trophies, graduation pictures, everything. There were people who rushed over to those dumpsters to rescue trophies, awards, high school pictures. And that is the most hurtful thing. But what no one can take away from you are the memories of what was good. And that is what the Legacy Dinner does every year, that those people from Phoenix High School come back. And it does not matter if you're the class of 1940 or the class of 1950. You love each other because you went to Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. I will tell you, if Miss Margaret is the mayor of Hampton, you are the official city manager, and you can teach us to gamble with rats any day. Thanks, Jay. All right, next up we have David Novak. David is highly regarded for his ability to bring ancient tales, classic myths, you hear the old in here, and original stories to life. He is a recipient of the Oracle Circle of Excellence Award for Storytelling, the R.N. Harris Memorial Playwright Award for Excellence in Professional Theater and Children. He's been doing this for 30 years, and he is experienced with performing and teaching artists, including Master Storyteller for Disney, the Lincoln Center Institute, the LA Music Center, and the National Storytelling Festival. He has appeared in Singapore, the Czech Republic, Sydney in Australia, and throughout China. So he's a fellow in an he's an A+ fellow for the North Carolina Arts Council and the North Carolina Wolf Trap Teaching Artist. So I'd like you guys to give a big welcome to Mr. Novak.
You have to decide for yourself whether that was worth it. I don't know. Yeah, you see, I love the fact that what we have over here on the wall is a photograph. But now what we have, thanks to Jay, is an experience, right? And they just can't take away the memories of what was good. And the nice thing about this, all that we're doing here, that I think is so important, is that I've got a rat man in my memory now. I think that's been the efficacy of storytelling all along, is that, you know, one life can contain so much experience. But when that life gets shared with someone else, the experience is multiplied and multiplied. Now I get to have an experience that I could have lived looking at me in no other way, having been able to listen to Jay today and to all of you. So I'm extremely grateful for the compounding of experience that we have come together to share. Sterling was an upright little salt shaker who stood at attention at the center of the dining room table, right next to the old pepper mill. Even though they were stationed together and often called into the service together, they did not enjoy a great camaraderie. The old pepper mill was too coarse a fellow. And Sterling, though not a snob, was more refined. He had such bright, clear, clean leaded crystal sides and such a shiny silver cap. And besides that, Sterling was only newly arrived at his station at the center of the table, and the old pepper mill had been there for a long time, and took it upon himself to advise this new arrival, this new recruit, in his hard-formed philosophy, which basically was, grip tightly what you've got, for once it is gone, there is nothing. Well, Sterling didn't really know what he thought or what he believed. He only knew that he had to serve. And during the dinner hour, he served well. He came, you see, from the sideboard where his mother had recently retired. That's how he came to be at the center of the table. His mother was an old salt cellar, proud of the fact that she was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. And that she could trace their family lineage as far back as Queen Anne's table. But during the dinner hour, Sterling was busy with his head down at work, always letting his salt flow freely wherever it was wanted, wherever it was needed, as he was passed from hand to hand, over plate, over bowl, all around the dinner table, and then back to the center of his station there beside the old pepper mill. And in the hours after dinner, after the guest had left the room, the moon would rise and look in upon all of her charges, for she is mistress of all things silver and crystal. That was a perfect transition there, actually. There comes the moon, just like that. And at such times, then, the dinnerware would have its nightly after-dinner conversation, you know. The plate would say, "Did you see the way that boy kept tapping me with his spoon? Really, I thought I would chip." Or the wine glass might complain, "Oh, that old man kept twirling and twirling me. I became so dizzy, I almost spilled my Bordeaux." And sometimes, at such times, they would be joined by the little book mouse. The book mouse had moved into the house from the field many seasons before, taken up residence in the library, because she said nobody ever used it. And besides, books make the very best bedding. So whenever she joined the table, she always had some little bit of literature she'd recently been nibbling upon to offer up. Things like, "Oh, a thing of beauty is joy forever," or "The poetry of the earth will never die," or "We are such stuff as dreams are made on." But somehow or other, it was always the old pepper mill who would have the last word. Grip, grip, grip to what you've got, for once it is gone, there's nothing. And Sterling stood silent, not sure what he thought or what he believed. But one night, that all changed during the dinner hour, as he was suddenly held aloft from a dinner guest who was uncertain whether her soup needed more salting. And for the first time in his career, he looked up from his work and looked around as she fumbled him back and forth between thumb and forefinger, and Sterling looked out across beyond table's end, and there, glimmering, luminous in the moonlight, he saw a vision of loveliness. She, the voluptuous, inviting she, her broad hips curving in at the waist and opening out to reveal her chaste white treasure for all the world to enjoy. And in that instant, Sterling fell hopelessly in love with the sugar bowl. And then he was set back at his station at the center of the table. But from that moment on, his every desire was to achieve his newfound beloved beyond table's end. And that night, after the guest had left the room, he hailed the passing gravy boat and rowed across the broad blue expanse of the table, past candelabra and cutlery. And as he passed the sideboard, he called out to his mother, "Mama, I'm off to seek my true love." Why a salt shaker should see fit to seek his true love is more than I can fathom, she replied. But if you must go, take these few grains of advice with you. Bear in mind that not all that glitters is true salt. And every silver lining has its cloud. But Sterling gave little heed, so in love was he. He reached table's end, bid farewell and thanks to the gravy boat, and looked out across the dark expanse that separated the big table from the tea service by the window, and there she was again, between teapot and creamer, glowing luminous in the moonlight. And he called out to her, "Lady, I love you." "Oh, look, I've got an admirer, one of the knobs up on the big table," she said. "A handsome knight. Well, you love me. Whew, isn't that nice to hear? Well, if you want me, woo me then." Well, Sterling knew nothing of courtship or wooing, but he did try to pull together some small repertory of things he'd heard around the dinner hour, things like, "For these and all thy blessings we give thanks," and "We've gathered together to ask the Lord's blessing," or "Good food, good meat, good God, let's eat." And that was enough for the sugar bowl. Oh my goodness, he's a handsome knight, and he's so refined. Well, you have won me, my troubadour. You have wooed me and won me. I'm here, I'm waiting, come to me. Without a second thought, Sterling leapt from table's end. And for a moment, he found himself among the stars and the angels, surrounded by an heavenly music. And in the next instant, he fell hard upon the floor, far short of the tea service. He hit his cap. It was dented and knocked from him. His salt spilled in every direction, but his sturdy leaded crystal held firm. "Oh," said the sugar bowl, "I never thought he'd do it." "I was just having fun." "Bah! Serves him right," said the creamer. "Young whippersnapper, don't you know she's mine? She's all mine. We commingle under cover of coffee and tea, we do." And they laughed so derisively at the fallen salt shaker. And the moon, as though she could not bear the tragic scene any longer, passed on. And the room fell into a deep darkness. And there he remained. And some time later, the little book mouse came scuttling about looking for crumbs and leavings. And when she saw the salt spread across the floor, she said, "Ah, such a sight as this becomes the field, but here shows much amiss." And then she saw Sterling. "Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. O little one, what brought you to this base declension? Was it treachery? Was it false pride? Was it love?" Sterling let loose a shuddering sob. "Oh," said the book mouse, "love it was. I might have known. Only love can make such a mess." And so, gently stroking Sterling, she said, Now, tell me what happened." And sobbing brokenly, Sterling recounted the story of how he had fallen for the sugar bowl. And when he was finished, the little book mouse said, "Oh, you have a great heart, and great hearts will break. But really, the sugar bowl is not worthy of you. I don't think you were in love with her at all. Look at how dull and dark she is now. No, I think what you fell in love with was the moonlight. That's what we fall in love with, the moonlight that shines at everything." "I love her," said Sterling, not willing to let loose his sad story. "Oh," said the book mouse, "she's just not worth you. She's all empty calories. She's a mere confection, an afterthought. You, my dear boy, have that which kings and queens go to war over. You have true salt. That's why you stand at the center of the table." "Oh," said Sterling, "nevermore, nevermore." "That reminds me of something," said the book mouse, "though I can't quite put my tongue on it. Still, I know how it must feel, for the one returning to the surface is always different from the one that dives." That's Rilke, but I think it fits in this instance. "Still, if you have no use for this salt, I could—" "Oh, take it all," said Sterling. "Oh, thank you," said the book mouse, "I will, but I can't have something for nothing. Still, what can I give thee, O liberal and princely giver, who hast taken the purple and the gold of thine own heart, unstained and untold, and set it beside the wall for such as I to take or leave withal?" That's Elizabeth Barrett Browning nice, don't you think? I think so. "Well, I'll think of something," she said, and she gathered up an armful of salt and scurried away. And the next morning, the kitchen maid found Sterling lying there on the floor, gently lifted him and polished him and refilled his reservoir and replaced his cap and sent him again to the center of the table where he was stationed, and there was the peppermill waiting. "What did I tell you? Grip, grip, grip to what you've got. Once it's gone, there's nothing." And Sterling, with his broken heart and his newfound melancholy, was more inclined to agree. So choked with tears was he that his service during the dinner hour became much less liberal than before. Dinner guests took to tapping him roughly just to get him to loose a few simple grains of salt. And in the after-dinner conversation that was all palled over with Sterling's newfound melancholy and the peppermill's austere philosophy. Anything worth having is worth working for. Grip, 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 grip. But one night, the book mouse came scurrying up to Sterling, her arms laden with some white treasure. "Sterling," she said, "I have it. I have just the thing to repay you for the salt you gave me, just what you want, just what you need." "What I want," said Sterling, "what I need is love. Can you give me love?" "Well, I can give not what men call love. But wilt thou accept not the worship the heart sends above and the heavens reject not? The desire of the moth for the star, of the night for the morrow, the devotion to something afar from the sphere of our sorrow?" That's Shelley. You'd like him. "If so, have this." And she held up a grain of rice. She slipped it under his cap, and immediately his tears began to dry. "Oh, that's nice," said Sterling. "Thank you. You're welcome. Is there more?" "Oh, yes, much more." "May I have some?" "Yes, but you must pay for the rest." "Oh, well, do you want more salt?" "No, thanks to you. I've got plenty of salt." "No, I was thinking not of something so tangible, but something more important. I'll tell you what. I will grant you a grain of rice for some memory of good, some memory of something kind, beautiful. A grain of rice for something nice." "Oh," said Sterling, "there is nothing good or nice in my life." "Yes, I know it must feel that way," said the book mouse, "but come on, Dig deep. I'm sure you can find some little act of kindness. Well, said Sterling, the kitchen maid polishes me from time to time. Yes, well, that's a fair start, said the book mouse. Here, have a grain of rice. Anything more? Come on. I know there must be more. Well, he said, looking off to the sideboard, my mother was always telling me how important I am. Yes, I guess that counts, said the book mouse. Here, have another grain of rice. Now, come on, I think you're really holding out on me. That night I leapt from table's end. For a moment, I was among the angels and the stars. I was surrounded by heavenly music. Oh, that was so glorious. Yes, said the book mouse. That's worth 3 grains of rice. And so talking in this way, Sterling's heart soon filled with rice until it was wholly mended and his tears completely dried. And after that, his service in the dinner hour became much more liberal once more as he let his salt flow freely from hand to hand, from plate to bowl. And when he came back to the center of the table, he looked about him and he saw the faces surrounding him shining in the moonlight. And he knew, yes, it is the moonlight that shines in everything. The peppermill, meanwhile, holding on to his hard philosophy, soon lost his usefulness at the center of the table, and his long years of service ground to a halt. He was removed from his position and replaced shortly thereafter by a slender young pepper shaker, much more to Sterling's liking. And Sterling, now finding himself the senior at the center of the table, took it upon himself to offer his new partner his new-formed philosophy. I have come to believe, he said, that we must give freely such gifts we have. For we all carry that within us that we can never lose. That is our memories of the good, our experience of kindness and beauty. That is our rice. So, if you see Sterling, you'll know him right away. He's got a little dent in his cap. It's a story he can tell you. Look closely, you'll find he still holds all that salt close to all that rice close to his heart. For it is his desiccant against despair. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I will never look at a sugar bowl the same way. All right, folks. Next we have Mitch Capel. So some of us call him lovingly Big Daddy. Right? So, but he goes by Granddaddy Junebug, and he's a master storyteller, recording artist, a published author, and a poet. He is good with plucking the string, and he's featured in numerous schools, libraries, museums, and festivals. DuSable in Chicago, the Kennedy Center in D.C., the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee, the Smithsonian's 2009 Folklife Festival in the National Mall, and the presidential inauguration of Barack Obama. He's been the artist in residence at the International Storytelling Center and has received accolades from local, state, and national. So we would like to welcome Mitch Capel.
Thank you very much. Whew, what a great looking audience we have here today. Yes. What's the theme? Season like wine? What is it? Aged like good wine. That's what it was. Aged like good wine. Yes, yes, indeed. When I turned 60, I told everybody I was turning 60. I turned 70, I told my wife, I said, I'm being aged like good wine. She locked me in the cellar. I love seasoned folks. I love folks. I was flying one time, I was sitting beside a gentleman. He was about 95 years old, and we started a conversation, and he had a hearing aid he was talking about he just got. He said, man, I could hear everything now. I can hear the children across the street playing. I can hear the crickets again and the birds chirping. I could hear things I hadn't heard in years. And I said, really? He said, yeah, it was expensive, but it was worth every penny. I said, well, I hate to ask, but how much was it? He said it was $5,000. I said, $5,000 for a hearing aid? Yeah. I said, dang, man. I said, what kind is it? He said, 330. I love seasoned folks. I love seasoned folks. Old couple went to the doctor, and the doctor checked him out, and he said, everything is fine. And she said, well, we just have a problem. We can't remember like we used to. The doctor said, that happens. You just have to write it down. So, okay, that night they went in the den, and the husband got up, and he was going in the kitchen. She said, where are you going? So I'm going to get some ice cream. You want some? He said, yeah, bring me some vanilla. He said, okay. She said, ain't you going to write it down? The doctor said, write it down. He said, I can remember that vanilla ice cream. She said, well, I want some chocolate syrup on it. He said, okay. She said, ain't you going to write it down? The doctor said, write it down. And he said, I can remember vanilla ice cream with chocolate syrup. She said, well, I want some wet walnuts on top of that. He said, okay. She said, ain't you going to write it down? The doctor said, write it down. He said, I can remember woman, vanilla ice cream, chocolate syrup, and wet walnuts. He went in the kitchen, and he came out an hour and a half later. He put a plate of bacon and eggs down in front of her. She said, I told you should have wrote it down. You forgot my toast. I like seasoned folks. I like seasoned folks. 99-year-old couple was sitting in the restaurant, assisted living place on the front porch, and they was rocking back and forth. They'd been married a long time. Out of a while, the little old lady, she picked up her little cane, and hard as she could muster, she whacked her husband across the legs with it. He rubbed his legs and looked at her and said, what was that for? She said, that was for 70 years of being a horrible lover. The little old man rubbed his legs and thought about that thing, and finally he picked his little cane up, and hard as he could muster, he whacked her across the legs. She looked at him and said, what was that for? He said, that was for knowing the difference. I love seasoned folks. I love seasoned folks. My grandmother, Eleanor Lee Capel, over in Windblow, North Carolina. Y'all don't know nothing about that, y'all city folks. But she was the daughter of Tip Stevenson Leake. Tip Stevenson Leake had been married before. He was born in 1856 and was married before to Rilla Baldwin, and they had 10 children. She died at the turn of the century, so he remarried again, Addie Dawkins, and they had 10 more children. So there was, anyway, my grandmother was one of those. Her name was Eleanor Leake Capel. So her half-brother, Ed Leake, lived on her property there in Windblow, North Carolina. And everybody thought Uncle Ed was dumb because he didn't have a formal education, and he stuttered a lot, and people didn't respect him. But I loved Uncle Ed when I'd go visit my grandmother as a child, because Uncle Ed would walk me up to the store up there, Pratt Gallimore store, about 1.5 miles from where my grandmother lived at the crossroads. And we'd walk up there, and I was about 8, 9 years old. And as we got closer, them good old boys was up there playing checkers, and they see Uncle Ed getting closer, and they start nudging each other. Here come old dumb Ed. Here come old dumb Ed. Watch this. Watch this. And they call, oh, Ed, come over here, man. Come over here, Ed. Come here, boy. Uncle Ed walk over there, and one of them hold out his hand, and he had a dime and a nickel. He said, Ed, you can have either one of them you want. Take whatever you want. Uncle Ed would pick that dime up, and he'd look at it, turn it over, and put it back. He'd take that nickel, look at it, turn it over, he'd put that in his pocket, and they laugh. Oh, Ed, he's dumb. He think that nickel's worth more than that dime because the nickel is bigger than the dime. This went on for a long time, and finally we were walking back. And I said, Uncle Ed, you know good and well that dime is worth more than that nickel. Why do you let them people make a fool out you every time we walk up to that store? Uncle Ed said, well, I got to figure like this. The first time I take that dime, they gonna quit trying me. So Uncle Ed taught me a valuable lesson. A slow dime in the hand, a slow dime in the pocket is worth a lot more than a fast dime in the hand. Okay, Ed. This next little story I'm gonna tell you, thank you, came to me by way of a song. Some of y'all might know it, by Diana Reeves, and it reminds me of my grandmother, Eleanor Leak Capel. Silver gray hair, neatly combed in place. There were 4 generations of love on her face. She was so wise, no surprise passed her eyes. She'd seen it all. I was a child, about 3 or 4. All day I'd ask questions, at night I'd ask more, but whenever she never would ever turn me away. I said, Grandma, how can I be sure what is right or wrong? And why does what I want always take so long? Please tell me, where does God live and why won't he talk to me? I said, Grandma, what is love? Will I ever find out? Why are we so poor? What's life about? I want to know these answers before I fall off to sleep. Well, she sort of smiled as she tucked me in, and she pulled up that old rocking chair once again, but tonight she was slightly, remarkably different somehow. Slowly she rocked, looking half asleep. Grandma yawned as she stretched, and she started to speak. What she told me would hold me and mold me together inside. She said, all the things you ask you will know someday, but you have got to live in a patient way. God put us here by faith, and by faith we'll ease into better days. She said, child, we are like moons in the dark of night. Ain't no morning gonna come till the time is right. You can't get to better days unless you make it through the night. You got to make it through the night. Well, later that year, at the turn of spring, heaven sent angels down and gave my grandma her wings. Now she's flying and sliding and gliding in better days. And although I'm all grown up, I still get confused. I stumble through the dark getting bumped and bruised, but when night gets in my way, I can still hear my grandma say, be patient, child. Be patient. You will see those better days, but you got to be patient. She used to put me on her knee. She used to brush my hair. She used to tell me stories. My grandma took me everywhere. Be patient, child. Be patient. My grandmama told me one time there's only 2 things to worry about, being healthy or sick. She said, if you're healthy, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you're sick, you got 2 things to worry about. Either you're going to get better or you're going to get worse. If you get better, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you get sick, you got 2 things to worry about. Either you're going to get better, whether you're going to live, get better, or get worse. Did I say that already? I'm sorry. Okay, either you're going to get sick or you're going to die. If you're going to live, I'm sorry. I'm messing this all up. I'm sorry, Grandma. Either you're going to live or if you're going to die. If you live, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you die, you got 2 things to worry about. Whether you're going to heaven or whether you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you got two things to worry about. Original or extra crispy. I was in a school some years back, and I went and set my stage up. It was Granddaddy Junebug. I got mudcloth I put on the stage and had my stuff out there, and I went to the bathroom, and on the way back I decided I would stick my head in the classroom to see how they're teaching, because it's been a long time since I've been in a classroom at a middle school. And the teacher was discussing whales. She said, even though the whale is a large mammal, it has a small throat. It can't swallow nothing large. Little girl raised her hand and said, well, the preacher told me the whale swallowed Jonah. The teacher said, I'm your teacher. I want you to understand what I'm telling you. Even though the whale is a large mammal, it has a small throat. It can't swallow nothing large. Little girl said, well, the preacher told me the whale swallowed Jonah, and when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask him. The teacher said, well, what if Jonah went to hell? Little girl said, then you ask him. My mother made transition May 29th of this year, 25 days before her 91st birthday. She was my biggest fan, my biggest supporter. First year I was in Jonesboro in 1995, I was coming off the stage and I saw my mother walking down the aisle in front of me. And she was doing this and collecting money. I said, Mama, what are you doing? She said, I'm selling your cassettes. I said, Mama, they got a big tent where they're selling everything. She said, they buying them. I would often tell the story on the road. It's dedicated to my mother and all mothers. It's by Macmillan. The woman was old and poor and gray, bent by the chill of a winter's day. The streets were white with the recent snow, and the woman's feet with age were slow. At the crowded crossing, she waited long, jostled aside by the careless throng of human beings that passed her by, unheeding the glance of an anxious eye. Down the street with laughter and shout, clad in the freedom of school let out, came happy boys like a flock of sheep, hailing the snow piled white and deep. Past the woman old and gray, hastened the children along the way. Not one of them lent a hand to her, so timid and weak and afraid to stir, lest the automobile's wheels or the pedestrian's feet should trample her down in the slippery street. At last there came from the merry troop the kindest boy of all the group. He paused beside her and whispered low, I'll help you across if you wish to go. Her old weak hand on his strong young arm she placed, and without hurt or harm he guided her trembling steps along, proud that his own were young and strong. Then back again to his friends he went, his young heart happy and well content. She's somebody's mother. Boys, you know, for all she's aged and poor and slow, when someone somewhere might lend a hand to help my mother. You understand. If ever she's old and poor and gray and her dear son is far away. Somebody's mother bent low her head in her home that night, and the prayer she said was, God, be kind to that noble boy who is somebody's son and pride and joy. Faint were the words and worn and weak, but the Creator hears when his creation speaks. Angels caught the faltering words, and somebody's mother's prayer was heard. Another one of my favorite mother stories. Found this story in the library. It's a Paul Dunbar story, and I laughed so hard they kicked me out of the library and told me never come back. I couldn't wait to memorize it. You see, Melinda, she fell deep in love with this here boy she knew. And it was quite the proper thing, because, well, he was in love with her too. She hastened home and told her Paul that shortly she would wed one likely Rufus Brown, when Paul looked up and said, "No, honey child, you can't do that. You'll have to find another. Don't tell your ma, but Rufus Brown am surely your half-brother." Melinda shed a few soft tears, then slowly went her way. But soon she met another boy and hastened home to say, "Now, Pop, I'm going to marry that Smith boy down the street. He ain't got no bad habits, and he sure can dress up neat." But Paul, he slowly shook his head, then looked across at Mother and whispered, "No, child, you can't do that. That Smith boy am your half-brother." Melinda, she forgot her oath, then blurted out at Mother, "Paul say I can't marry Rufus Brown, 'cause he be my half-brother. And when I turned to Sonny Smith, although it seemed like treason, but Paul say I can't marry him on account of the same reason." Her mama said, "Now, honey child, don't you cry. Put on your wedding cap. Marry any one of them boys you like." You ain't no kin to Pap. That's called kinfolk. Could have been called mama's baby, father's maybe. I love telling that story at family reunions. That's my time. I love y'all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mitch. Pastor, I like my chicken extra crispy. Just in case you got to put a word in for me there. So. All right, next up we have Darcy Tucker. She's an author, playwright, historian, actress, and storyteller. She portrays more than 20 women for American history and performs in venues nationwide. She teaches through storytelling and character interpretation. She's the founding director of a character interpretation program at a Tennessee university. She consults for museums and municipalities, and she recently was granted the Mount Vernon Research Fellowship to turn her original one-woman play, Revolutionary Women, into a book for middle grade tea readers. So Darcy lives in Williamsburg, and we'll bring her up now. This one or that one? You good?
This is fine, yeah. Hello. I am not going to portray someone from history now, but I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories that's an ancient British tale. Long ago, there was a very powerful duke. Sir Robert was lord of all he surveyed. All the land within his view was his own. All of the people on that land worked for him. He was proud of his family line, and most of all, he was proud of his son. He had a little 4-year-old boy, and in that boy's face, he saw the future of his powerful, wealthy family. He had the gift of sight, and so when his son turned 5, he decided he would consult with the fates and find out what powerful, wealthy family would provide a bride for his son someday. And when he consulted the fates, to his horror, he learned that his son was to marry the daughter of the pauper in the village who had been born that morning. Oh, absolutely not. And he jumped on his black steed and he rode as quickly as he could down into the village. And there was the pauper sitting on the stoop in front of his little hovel, weeping. And the Duke said, "Why do you weep?" He said, "My wife just gave birth to another child. This is our 10th. We couldn't feed the children we already had. What are we going to do? How are we going to feed our children? How can we take care of this child?" And the Duke said, "Don't worry. I will take care of him for you." "You would do that?" said the man. "Oh, absolutely," said the Duke. "Go, get the child. Bring the child to me." So the man ran into the house, pulled that newborn baby out of her mother's arms, handed her to the Duke. "Thank you, sir, thank you so much for helping us." And the Duke said, "Say nothing of it." And he cradled that baby in his arms, and he rode out of the village, up onto a high cliff that overlooked the river. And he watched the water sparkling. And he looked down at that baby, and he watched the water sparkle. And then he threw the baby over the cliff. Now, I know that sounds terribly shocking, and it is, but you should know she did not die, because air caught in her swaddling clothes, and when she landed on the water, she didn't sink. She floated downriver to the sea, where there was an old fisherman casting out his net. Now, this fisherman and his wife had always wanted a child. They'd never had one. And there he was casting out his nets when he heard a squeaking. And when he looked, there was a pile of rags in the water. And when he waded up to that pile of, it was a baby. It was a baby. He and his wife finally had a baby. So he scooped up that little girl and he took her home to his wife. And they loved that child more than any parents have ever loved a child before. And when she was 12, her mother died. So at that young age, she became the woman of the house. And it was not an easy life. He was a poor man, a fisherman. She spent her days cooking and cleaning and mending the fishing nets. But she found that she had a gift for cooking. And one day, not long after, she was 16, when her father came rushing home and said, "There is a great hunting party coming. We've got to feed them. We have nothing to feed them with, but we can't turn them away. What will we do?" And she said, "Father, don't worry. Don't worry. I'll fix a feast." And out of nothing, she created for them a feast that was as beautiful to the tongue as it was to the eye. And when they had finished dining, the head of that hunting party, the Duke, said, "Sir, I must congratulate your wife. She is an astonishing cook." And he said, "It was my daughter, actually. It was my daughter." And the Duke said, "Well, I must congratulate your daughter." So he went into the house, brought the girl out, and the Duke said, "Oh, aren't you a lovely thing? Tell me, how did you learn to cook?" And she talked about her mother and the skills that she had learned from her mother. How old are you?" And she said, "Well, I'm 16. I don't know exactly when I was born. My father found me floating in the water when I was a newborn baby." So the Duke knew. And the wheels in his head turned quickly. No pauper's daughter would marry his son. So he said, "This is no life for you. You're wasted here in a fisherman's hut. I know a better job for you. My brother needs a cook. He lives in a great house, and I know he happens to be looking for a cook. Would you like a job?" And the girl didn't want to leave. She and her father were very close. But her father said, "Go, child. This is your opportunity. You don't want to be stuck here forever." So they embraced and shed tears, but the Duke then handed her a note to his brother and some money, because would be a 2-day walk, and she would need to stop at the tavern along the way. And so she set off walking, and she arrived at the tavern and paid for her room, went upstairs and was settling in when crashing bangs, booms, gunshots. There were highwaymen who had attacked downstairs in the tavern. She didn't know what to do. She cowered behind the door. She put furniture up against it, but before she knew it, they had pushed that door open. They grabbed her and said, "Oh, aren't you a pretty little thing?" And then they threw her in the closet and locked the door. And she heard them going through her meager possessions and snickering about the things that she had with her. And then one said, "Oh, there's a note. Let's see what the note says." And she heard them reading, "My dear brother, I hope this note finds you well. And I hope that my son's visit is going well. Please do me the favor when you receive this message." Silence. Because what they had read was, "Please do me the favor when you receive this message of putting its bearer to death." Now, these were robbers. They were not murderers. And they couldn't put that girl to death. So they found paper and they found a pen and they rewrote the note. "My dear brother, I hope you're doing well. I hope my son's visit is going well. Do me the favor when you receive this message of immediately marrying its bearer to my son." So they folded up the letter and they sealed it, and they let her out of the closet, and they apologized for their rough behavior toward her. And the next morning, when she set off, shaken, she had the note in her hand, never knowing it was a different note. When she arrived at the great house, and the door opened, and she handed the note to the Baron's brother, he read the note. He looked a little surprised, but he said, "Jonathan, come." And when Jonathan, his nephew, walked into the room, he said, "Your father wants you to marry this girl." Well, they were both a little surprised, but they both liked what they saw, so they agreed to be immediately married. Now imagine when several weeks later, the Duke came home. His son was there with his new bride, and when the Duke saw that, he managed to control his face. He smiled and he said, "Let's have a meal together and talk, shall we?" And they sat and they talked, and then he said, "My son, would you be so kind as to allow me to take a walk with my new daughter?" And neither of the young people suspecting a thing, the girl walked out the door with the Duke. They walked through the fields, conversing pleasantly, until they reached the high cliff overlooking the sea. When the Duke grabbed the girl by the shoulders and began to drag her towards the edge of the cliff, but she was young, she was strong, and she was able to fight him off, and he said, "Fine, fine. If I can't throw you over, then don't you ever come to my house again unless you have my ring in your hand." And with that, he threw his ring as far out into the sea as he could. He turned on his heel, walked away, and she stood there shaken. What had just happened? Where was she to go? She was far from home. She didn't know where she was. She had no money. She couldn't go back. So she walked. And after a while, she saw a house in the distance. And when she arrived at the house and inquired, they didn't need a cook, but they did need a scullery maid, someone to scour the pots and pans. So she took the job. And they were kind to her. And every once in a while, knowing that she liked to cook, they would let her cook. And they were impressed at how good a cook she was. One day, word came that a hunting party was coming to the house. And when she discovered who was at the head of this hunting party, she said, "May I cook?" And the cook said, "No, no." So she rolled up her sleeves with the other servants and began to gut the piles and piles of fish that had been brought in for the dinner. And she picked up one, stuck in her knife, and as she gutted it, she begged, "Please, please, can I just cook the fish for the Duke? That's all. Nothing else, please." And the cook finally said, all right. You can cook that one fish." Well, the banquet ended. The Duke, as was his custom, called to speak with the cook to congratulate her for her fine handiwork. And when the cook walked out, she took her accolades for everything else, but she said, "I must be honest, sir. I did not cook your fish. There's a scullery maid who did." And he said, "Well, a scullery, well, it was delicious. Bring her out." And the cook went, got the girl, who walked out and said, "Tell them what you did." The blood drained from his face. "Tell them what you did, or I will tell them what you did." And with that, he confessed to trying to throw her over the cliff that day. And then he confessed things that she didn't even know, that he had in fact thrown her over the cliff as a newborn infant, and that he had tried to get his own brother to kill her. Now, the story says that she forgave him and that she went back and was happily wedded with his son, and they all lived happily ever after. And maybe that's what happened. Or maybe he was dragged before a magistrate and made to pay for his crimes. I don't know. Only you can decide. Do I have another minute? 3 minutes. Okay. In this time of dementia, we all have been touched by it. I want to let you know my dad had dementia, and there was great debate in the family about how present he was and how much he was aware of. But 3 things happened that told me he was still there. He had always had a great sense of humor. Now, I don't know why it is, but anytime anyone in my family says the word nostril, I lose it. I laugh so hard, I can't breathe. We call it vapor locking in my family. I don't know why, but anytime anyone says nostril, I vapor lock. So my family had called me. They're in California, and they were all sitting around the table. Dad was barely speaking at this point. And my sister started talking about nostrils. And my other sister started talking about nostrilitis. And then my mom said something about nostrilemia. And I, 3,000 miles away, was silent because I was vapor locked. I could not breathe because I was laughing so hard. And my dad, who's barely spoken the entire time, says, "Don't forget Nostradamus." Then we were at the facility. He was a big man, and he had gotten to where he was on the floor a lot, and my mom just couldn't care for him anymore, so she had put him in a facility nearby and was there every day. I went to see him, and we were reading. I was reading to him from Popular Mechanics and Popular Science, which he loved. And after a while, he pointed up into the trees. And I said, "What, do you hear something?" And he said, What's it saying?" It was a bird. And I said, "I don't know. What does it sound like to you, Dad?" And he said something. I don't remember what it was. I'll say banana. That wasn't it. But I said, "Yeah, it does kind of sound like banana, doesn't it?" We listened for a minute. I read some more, maybe an hour, and he pointed into the trees again. What's it saying? And I said, I don't know. It kind of sounds like banana to me. He says, same damn bird. And then he's been nonverbal all day. We are in the parking lot of the grocery store. Mom is buying ice cream because he loves ice cream. And we're sitting in the car, and I'm making one-sided conversation to pass the time. And I said, Dad, I'm working on a story right now, and I'm not sure where I'm going with it. I don't know if I'm going to be the main subject in it or if it's happening to someone else. But the crux of the issue is there is a woman having a mammogram when the power goes out. And Dad says, glad to get that off your chest.
I want to know why the guys are laughing so hard at that joke. Thanks, Darcy. Good job. All right, and now we have Miss Sheila Arnold. She doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to attempt anyway. So Sheila has a talent for storytelling and history and a compassion for people. She provides storytelling, historic character presentations, Christian monologues, and professional development for schools, festivals, churches, and organizations nationally and internationally. She is a co-founder of the Artistic Director of Artists Standing Strong Together, ASST, and a source of inspiration. She's been honored with the 2021 McDowell Artist Fellow, the 2020 Mount Vernon Research Fellow, and a 2019 Hinox Artist Colony Summer Residence Noted Artist. She lives in Hampton with her family, so Miss Sheila Arnold. This one along.
Thank you. Have you had a good time so far? Yeah. I can tell that some people came today and they didn't know what they were coming in for. Some of y'all were like that, weren't you? You're like, well, we're just going to come and check this out. It seems to be everywhere. And then you got here and you went, You looked around the audience, well, okay. Then you heard the first story and said, what the heck did we walk into? And then you started laughing and you haven't stopped since, except when you were crying or unless you were getting the story all full of you. That's what stories do for us. So I'm just so glad to have all of you here. And I know some of you are brand new to the area, so we're glad that you have come in and gotten a chance to know us. I want to take a moment and I want to stop and say thank you to Peter Kanicki. So we're going to try it again because he is our ASL interpreter. And so when applause happens in the ASL world, it is that. Okay, so we want to give him that. Although he can hear me very clearly, as you can tell. I just want to make sure that we're practicing for that when we have that. And the one thing I just have to say about Peter, and later Allie will be joining us, Griffin, is that he has been with us since 2 years ago. And then Allie, who's going to come, has also been with us. And so we forgot to make sure ASL interpreters were, like last Sunday, Saturday, I'm writing, oh my gosh, we haven't requested for our deaf interpreters. Oh, and Jay's like, handle it. And I'm like, okay. And so I sent a Mosaic over, Mosaic Interpretive Services over in Richmond. I'm so sorry, and here's the request, and da-da-da-da. And on Monday morning, we've got it covered, and this is who we have. And I'm like, that was quick. And it was the two of them. And so I asked him today, I said, it's almost like you put us on your calendar. We did. They were just waiting for us to get the request in, so we would do that. That is what a true joy is, to be able to do it. And I love the stories. I just have to do a special thank you to David. I love the salt shaker story. The first time I ever heard the salt shaker story, I was like, I keep telling David, I love that story. I love that story. And then to watch you all love the story too was like, yeah, how can we not do that? So I just have to say a special thank you to David, because I know he did that just for me. And I like that. So I like Brer Rabbit. Y'all ever heard of Brer Rabbit? I got a whole new recordings of Brer Rabbit. And this afternoon, this evening, probably tomorrow, I'll have those recordings here. You can buy it if you want to. But Brer Rabbit means something. And Brer Rabbit is, now first I want to make sure you understand. Brer means brother. Brer means brother. What does Brer mean? Brother. What does sis mean? Okay, very good. There wasn't too long of a pause in between that, but there was a lot less people who were definitely in that answer than there were. But Brer Rabbit is, I call him the grandson of Anansi. Anansi, A-N-A-N-S-I, Anansi the spider, Anansi the trickster, Anansi the hero, Anansi from the western coast of Africa. Anansi brought in the hearts and the minds of the people who were enslaved and brought to this country to have their feet land first in Hampton, Virginia in 1619, at least for British America. We're not going to go down the road of being with French people and Spanish people who were here long before, because we just don't do all that kind of history. That's right. We're Virginians. Anansi the trickster, Anansi the one who knew things the way. Anansi stopped along the way in the Caribbean, in the West Indies. And there, well, he helped give birth to Aunt Nancy. Aunt Nancy is the story, the trickster, the storyteller there. And here, well, it wasn't spiders so much. It wasn't turtles so much, although a little bit, but there was certainly a lot of rabbits. And mixed with the stories of the native people, the indigenous peoples here, well, we mix with those stories and we have Brer Rabbit. Now, when you look at Brer Rabbit, you may think, oh, there's not really a point of those stories nowadays. Oh, no. We need to look at those stories because Brer Rabbit represented those who were the weakest. You got a rabbit, a wolf, a coyote, a wolf, a fox, and a bear. Who is the weakest again? Rabbit. But he always seems to win. He always finds a way, because when you have no power, you must use creativity. You must use your mind. You must use your wit to find a way to win. And so it was used. And we can use it today too. When something is bigger than us and we think we can't win, we need a little trickster wit. Now, I told you that Brer Rabbit, he wins, but sometimes he loses to those that he is bigger than. He's always losing to Brer Turtle because sometimes he's the largest. So this is one of the Brer Rabbit tales I like. I don't know if it has a purpose for us in thinking, but I kind of think it does. Are you ready? Yeah. All right. Now here's the deal. When I tell this story, I got to feel like I am not just sitting up here talking to myself. All right. Thank you. All right. They already figured out that I like a little church when I'm telling stories. So feel free to give me a little church. And if you are not from the tradition where church is a part of your stories, just follow the black people. And they will work it out for you. All right. Brer Wolf, he liked himself some Sis Quail. Sis Quail was, woo, She had a lot of things around. She was kind of large, and you know how those large women look. delicious, if I must say. But Sis Quail, she looked good, had that black and white feathers, and boy, and she was the epitome of who Brer Wolf wanted. Well, Brer Rabbit wanted her too. He really wanted to have, Sis Quail. But there was Brer Wolf. He was strong. Always wearing the latest suit, whether it was brown or gray or a little mixture of the both of them, a little black on it. Oh, he was looking good. He would come over to Sis Quail and he would whisper sweet nothings. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing, nothing. Nothing, 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 nothing. And she would go, you're my kind of man. Some of y'all know a woman just like that. And so, Brer Rabbit, he didn't always look as good, but he thought he was pretty smart. So he also went over and he would whisper those sweet nothings in his own special way. No thing, not thing, nothing, 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 nothing. And she'd smile and say, you so cute. And y'all men know when you've been regulated to cute, there is little hope for you in the room. This just bothered Brer Rabbit. Here was Brer Wolf just filling himself and filling her ears with things. And she was, he would come around, you so cute. I just needed something. So one day he came up over to Sis Quail's house. Got over to Sis Quail's house, and Brer Wolf was just leaving away, and he said, Sis Quail, when I come back, I'm going to have to tell you, you're going to have to be my bride. That'd be fine. And he knew it was almost all over. Brer Rabbit did. So he climbed on the porch, and after Brer Wolf was away, Brer Rabbit said, well, I saw you had Brer Wolf here. Oh, yes, I did. Did he tell you about, his daddy and my daddy? Oh, I didn't know your daddies knew each other. Oh, yes, yes, yes. His daddy was the riding horse for my daddy. Oh, he didn't tell me that. Well, he probably didn't tell you that Brer Wolf been the riding horse for me sometimes. Oh, I can't believe he would leave that out. That seems like such a menial thing to do. Was he a good horse? Reasonable, well, but I ride him hard. Ooh. I like a strong man that can control such a wild animal like Wolf. Oh, I can control him all right. I got to go now. And Brer Rabbit went off because he knew what he was leaving her with. Because it was a southern town, so all he had to do was leave her. And the next thing you know, everybody on the block had heard the story about Brer Wolf being Brer Rabbit's riding horse. And they went around, oh, did you hear? Oh, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? Oh, did you hear? And it just went flying everywhere they went to go. And soon enough, it reached the ear of Brer Wolf. And Brer Wolf, what? That never happened. That never happened. That never happened. That was not me. That would never happen. That never happened. He went to Sis Quail. Sis Quail, I know what you heard. That is not true. It is not. Well, you just should have told me your past. It is not true. It is not. It is not. Brer Rabbit's going to come up here and tell you it ain't true. Well, I don't know, but all you have to tell me is who you was. That is not true. And he stomped off. Well, he started making his way. It took a day or so, and he made his way on down to Brer Rabbit. Brer Rabbit could hear him coming because he was mumbling. And he was mumbling. So Brer Rabbit had enough time to get into bed and get sick real good. So by the time, thank you, ma'am, and by the time he knocked on the door, Brer Rabbit said, yes. Brer Wolf, I'm coming in. Come on. Oh, hi, Brer Wolf. I'm just sick. I don't care how sick you are. You gonna get up out this bed. You've been telling lies on me. I didn't tell no. It must have been a misunderstanding. It won't no misunderstanding. Everybody talking about it. It won't. You gon' I'm gonna take you right now. We going to Sisquell. You gonna tell it. I can't go. You just go back and tell her it was a misunderstanding. I'll back you up later. No, no, you getting out this bed. You getting out this. I can't go. I'm too sick. I don't care. We getting you there. We getting you there. Well, I can't walk. Maybe you could carry me on your back. Fine, I'll put you on my back. I'm going to carry you on over there so you can get down and look at Sis Quail in the eye and tell her that you ain't never had me as an old riding horse. Well, if you insist. Brer Rabbit slowly tumbled out of the bed. Brer Wolf knelt down. Brer Rabbit slid on to Brer Wolf. And when Brer Wolf stood up, Brer Rabbit fell right off onto the ground. Oh, I can't go. I ain't got no strength, and your back is all hair. I just fall off all the time. No, you getting on my back. You gonna do that well. Maybe if I put a towel over you, I could stay on there better. Fine, get a towel. So, he slowly went and got a towel and put it over Brer Wolf and climbed up on there, leaned half to the side. All right, we going now. And Brer Wolf started walking. And Brer Rabbit said, "Oh, Brer Wolf, I can't go. You going slow, and I'm about to fall off. Well, no, all right. I'll just hold on to your ears." And they grabbed both the ears and they pulled. What? Let go my ears. Well, how am I gonna stay on you? Let go my ears. I'll just stay here. You just tell her I was misinterpreted. No, you gonna come. Well, I got a little bit of rope. If I tie it around your nose and then around your ears, I might be able to hold on. Fine. Get it for me. And so he went slowly over, picked up the rope, wrapped it around the nose, wrapped it around the ears. Brer Rabbit climbed back up on that towel, and he said, "All right, take it slow." Oh, we ain't going slow. You gonna get over there, because I got to marry this woman, because you done messed up things. All right. And so with his ailing self, coughing every moment, Brer Wolf started running. And are y'all with me on this? Then be with me on this. And running. That was pretty good. All right. And he was ailing all the time, barely with his head up, but one eye open. And right when he saw that they were coming towards the porch of Sis Quail, and Sis Quail was walking outside, standing up, he sat up in that seat. He put his knees together and put him into Brer Wolf. He pulled on that rope, and he said, "Get here, boy!" And off they went. And as they passed Sis Quail, Brer Rabbit said, "See, He's always been my riding horse.
And that is why she's the queen of what she does. Now, I want y'all, did y'all watch Peter? Yes. Nothing. Okay. Just to make sure. Okay. All right. Okay. How do you say story? Okay. All right. Do story. There you go. Story. Okay. All right. So you've learned something today, so your day is complete. All right. Next, we have Andy Offit Irwin. I'm going to read this just like you have it. So, with a manic, silly putty voice. Andy's awesome. He is a Southern balladeer. He's a mischievous schoolboy and part Marx Brothers. He's a storyteller, theater director, singer-songwriter, Shakespearean actor, artist in residence at Emory University's Oxford College, performed at LaGuardia High School in New York, the Library of Congress, Walt Disney World, and a mess of theaters, colleges, and festivals all over the United States. And he is from Covington, Georgia. So y'all come on up here, okay?
I'm going to do a Homer's Odyssey. Yes. We'll be here till we'll be here till Monday, or a little portion of it. And yeah, I am just a rambling boy, Ithaca bound. Wait a minute. There it is. I am just a rambling boy, Ithaca bound, making my way there from Troy, Alabama. Here's an adventure that I found. Is the Cyclops winking or blinking? That eyeball in his head. I listen for sounds of serenity with every word that he has said. I notice his squint, his mouth smirky slant. Can I see a friendly glance? No, I can't. And his complimentary mints are covered with ants. And the Cyclops winking or blinking. Oh. Is the Cyclops winking or blinking? How can I read his mood? I wonder what he is thinking. I'm thinking he thinks of me as food. Compared to this giant, I'm a little shrimp. He's putting mascara on his one eye to primp. How can you tell if a snake has a limp? And the Cyclops winking or blinking. Oh. Is the Cyclops winking or blinking? I just want to leave this cave. And from the way this cavern is stinking, I can tell Polyphemus don't never bathe. I wonder how this drama ends. This giant ain't getting no help from his friends, but he only pays half for his contact lens. And the Cyclops winking or blinking. Oh. That is the end of the instrumental verse. It ain't really an instrument, but it could be worse. And if I don't whistle, Jay Johnson will curse. Which really isn't a big deal around here now, is that? And the Cyclops winking or blinking. Oh, is the Cyclops winking or blinking? All alone he feels bereft. And I saw him try to swat that fly. It's clear he cannot perceive depth. So I stabbed him in the eye. Yes, I know you. Sometimes you gotta try when there's nothing else to do. Now I've gotta ride out underneath this U. All right, so if y'all remember, y'all learned this in 9th grade, probably. So Odysseus, he's traveling with his fellow travelers, and they're traveling along, and he looks around. There are fewer and fewer fellow travelers. Where everybody go, man? I'm just like, he's hungry. Oh man, he was so hungry. He was so hungry. And then, hey, wait, smell a barbecue place. Yeah, and then he looks over yonder, and there's the cave. And it's the barbecue smoke is coming out of the cave, and he knows it's a good place. He can smell that it's good, and it's a good barbecue joint because it doesn't have a paved parking lot. And he goes in there, and there he is. There's Polyphemus, the Cyclops, and what's cooking are his fellow travelers on a spit, and this ain't good. And there he is, and Polyphemus is the Cyclops' name. Polyphemus obviously means many famouses. Well, I guess the plural would be femi, wouldn't it? Oh, what do you know? You can't talk. Anyway, so that was uncalled for. And so there he goes. And then so the Polyphemus, he sees Odysseus, he goes, huh! And Polyphemus he's a Cyclops and he eats people, but he's still concerned about his food sources. So he says, what is your name? And Odysseus gets wise to him real quick. He goes, nobody. He picks up a stick, starts whittling. What is your name? Nobody. What is your name? Stabs him in the eye. Oh! Nobody has stabbed me in the eye. Nobody has stabbed me in the eye. And all the other giants in the neighborhood, they said, nobody has stabbed Polyphemus in the eye. Nobody has stabbed Polyphemus in the eye. So I guess Polyphemus ain't stabbed in the eye. And a lot of people, for those of you who are like into deep literature, the giants around Polyphemus are the first characters to ever say, duh. But meanwhile, Polyphemus is still on there, and the giant is so dumb, he ends his sentences with prepositions. He's going, where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at? He's trying to feel it. And so he crawls up. He crawls up under one of the sheep that are just hanging around, when there aren't people around to eat. He's got sheep in there. And he's feeling the top of the sheep, but Odysseus is under the sheep, and he's going, yeah, get me out of here, sheep. Come on. And he's under a ewe. And a ewe is a sheep, a female sheep. He's no longer winking or blinking. Oh, he's no longer winking or blinking. So my Aunt Marguerite and her friend Mary Frances, who are both 85 years old and only recently graduated from medical school, they arrived at their little clinic together, the clinic that's called Southern White Old Lady Hospital. If you had come to my piece earlier this morning, you would understand that, and you wouldn't be judging me as hard as you are now. And, when I was here a year ago, you found out that Marguerite, in her 1968 Plymouth Fury 2, I told a story called Spinners, and she was rear-ended in her 1968 Plymouth Fury 2, but she still has comprehensive insurance on it. You understand what I'm talking about? Yeah, so she got it fixed, Marshall from the Chrysler place had to go and get onto eBay and find a bumper, and they got it fixed up, and then they painted it, because when you get your body work done, but she went ahead and painted the whole car, because that there's that 1967 paint, because it's like a 68 car, it's probably paint, and then there's the 2024 paint that was last year, and Mary Frances wasn't going to take that. Now her car is a 1965 Mustang. See, she didn't know it was going to be that kind of car. You go, ugh. So I'd say 1968 Plymouth Fury 2, and you're, the 1965 Mustang. Well, her husband, Wiley, was a policeman. And when he made detective, there was one horse in the police department. There had been these horses that they had, and there was one that was still alive. And Wiley would ride the horse in the parade, the Christmas parade. It was like the police horse. We had one. And he would ride the horse if a traffic light was out. And they put, like, reflecto things, blanket on it, and he would direct traffic from the horse. And he knew how to direct traffic. He actually whistled like that. I won't do it here because I want to use my indoor whistle voice. And the room's too small. And but when he made detective, he couldn't do couldn't ride the horse anymore. They gave it to another cop, got to ride the horse, who didn't get to ride the horse. So he bought himself a Ford Bronco. And so he'd have a horse. Then he bought his wife a Mustang. And then he bought his nephew, who lives with him. He bought him a Pinto. And Mary Frances arrived at the clinic as soon as Marguerite did, and she had just gotten her car painted because Marguerite got her car painted tit for tat. She had to get her car painted, and Marguerite said, "Oh, look at your Mustang. Wiley would be so proud. It's so beautiful." And I remember when he had a Bronco and he got you the Mustang, he got Lewis the Pinto, and Mary Frances, who's a recreational liar, said, "Oh, that's right. And Ford's coming out with a new car. It's going to be the Gelding." And Margaret said, "Now, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They wouldn't do such a thing. Honey, we're talking about a car company that has the probe." "Oh, I remember Dr. Wheeler, the proctologist, drove one. That was an unfortunate choice." Thank y'all.
All right, guys. What's wrong? What's wrong with a Pinto? I had one. This color. We're good. We're good. Thanks so much, guys. All right. Did you guys have fun today? Yeah. All right. All right. So you got to remember storytelling. How do we do storytelling? Storytelling. Got it? All right. Okay. So for the show today, I just want to close with we appreciate Sheila and everybody and Jay for putting this all together. And we'll do it again next year. We hope you come back. We've got more things today and tomorrow, so I hope you come to all that.